What up, what up, what up? It's the man Sean P coming in live. This is the Sean P Experience. I have a very, very special treat with us today. I have Dr. Ian K. Smith. How you doing, sir?
Good, Sean. Thanks for having me. Glad to talk to you again.
Man, you had some mega, mega platforms. You've been on your tour. I've been watching you, and I'm so glad you made a stop here at the Sean P Experience. I'm gonna do your official introduction for those that live under a rock and don't know who this man is. Today we have a real special treat. He's a physician, a TV personality, a New York Times bestselling author, and he's back with another thriller that'll keep you turning pages way past midnight. I'm talking about none other than Dr. Ian K. Smith. Now, the K, is that K for Kane?
Nah, Kane
Okay,
is
okay, okay,
that'd be
okay.
cool though. Nah, Kane
I
is
thought I, I
C-A-Y.
thought I, I thought I caught you.
Yeah, yeah, Kane is Cayne, but that's pretty cool though.
Yes, sir. His latest Ash Kane novel, Beyond Midnight, is already making waves. I cannot wait to dig in. Welcome, Dr. Smith.
Thank you, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So this is one thing. Tell me, I asked you off air a little bit, but let's do it right now for the public. Why does the online book space still matter? Book Talk, BookTube, all these things. Why does that still matter for a traditionally major published author like yourself?
Well, I believe that the audience is growing online and off of traditional platforms. So more and more people are getting their books through audio or digital. Less people are going to bookstores; they're ordering books online. But also, I think that books are not immune to what's happening to the rest of the world. Most of our information globally is shared online and digitally, and the same with books. That people who want to talk about their books, who want to promote their books, or reach out to those who are following them, online is the easiest, most effective, most impactful way to do it. The linear and traditional systems of promoting and publicizing have really changed. Not everyone can get on a television show and launch their book. Not everyone can do a book tour and stop, at different cities. Everyone just can't do that. So I have been fortunate to be able to do those things, but I love the grassroots kind of equalizer that is social media and online. Now everyone can do it. Independently published, self-published authors, traditionally published authors like myself, we all can make use of these platforms and reach our readers, old and new readers, in a much more effective way. I think it's wonderful.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. So if you can, give us your elevator pitch for Beyond Midnight, sir.
Yeah, Beyond Midnight is the fifth installment of the Ash Kane Chicago-based detective series. Ash Kane is a former police detective who left the force because he wouldn't participate in the cover-up of a bad shooting of an unarmed teenager. So he leaves, he gets a financial settlement, he hangs up his own shingle and starts a PI business, taking on cases in and around the city. I wrote the series as standalone. So each book is a different case, and you can start anywhere in the series that you want. You can start with Beyond Midnight, which is the newest book, and then work your way back. Or you can start in the beginning, which is The Unspoken, which some people like to read series in order. You can do that, but you won't lose anything by starting with Beyond Midnight. Beyond Midnight, by the way, is the case of an undocumented worker who is found on the rocks of Lake Michigan, on the shore of Lake Michigan. His nephew has been told by the police that it was an accidental drowning, case closed, nothing to do. The nephew will not accept that for two reasons. One, his uncle didn't know how to swim. And two, his uncle was deathly afraid of water. So there is no way, under any circumstances, would his uncle go near the water. So he's convinced that there was foul play. And he is advised by someone to go seek out this guy named Ash Kane, who might take the case. He's a guy who fights for justice. No matter how much money you have or where you come from, Ash Kane is about seeking justice.
So, what inspired the particular themes in this storyline? Is it like something you saw in the news or something you see in everyday society?
Um,
And when do you know in your mind, like after all that analysis mentally, like you know what, I got a story now. When do you know it's that time?
Yeah, just casual observation. Going to Home Depot and seeing a lot of undocumented guys looking for work and getting into cars with strangers who they don't know to try to make a buck or two. And I just wondered, like, you know, these guys are largely out of the system, as we know, but also because they're unaccounted for, who's really looking out for them? Who's paying attention to them? If something happens to them, who knows? Who cares? And so I really was just intrigued by the idea that these real human beings who have real needs and real lives and real struggles are marginalized in society and in some cases dehumanized in society simply because they don't have legal documentation. And so this book, by the way, is not a political treatise on immigration, but I thought it would be interesting to start the book off with someone who is in this particular system where they are pretty much outcast. And so starting the mystery there, and then of course with all my books, the mysteries go in many different directions, but that I thought would be a good starting point.
So in all of your work, I noticed you do a very deep dive on all the subject matters, even though they're fictional. What was your research like for Beyond Midnight? Did you already have knowledge to draw from, or did it take you doing some immense new research in a whole different way?
Well, the beauty of fiction is you can make it all up if you want to. You know, nonfiction is fact based. Fiction, of course, is not. It's just creative. What I like to do is blend the two. So I like to do what's called faction. So I like to include a lot of real facts, even though it's a fictional account, a fictional story. And I think readers appreciate that. You know, I want to make sure that the neighborhoods are correct. I give you a little history. I want to make sure that the restaurants are right. And so I really do work very hard to make sure that things that people take for granted when they're writing a novel, that I pay attention to. I want to make sure that the streets, the one-way streets, are going the right way. Are they going east or west? I want to make sure the bridge is at the right place. Things that you are allowed, by the way, to take liberties on and not be so accurate. I tend to be very accurate. And so when I'm dealing with different topics, I like to research the topics. Based on my career of writing nonfiction, I like researching. I like understanding something so I can then take that information and give it to the reader in a way that adds more texture to the story, the plot, and the characters.
So I want to ask you this question because Ash Kane is set in Chicago. It's kind of like Batman in Gotham City, right? But could you imagine writing Ash Kane somewhere else outside of Chicago? And what would you imagine that research process to be like to get that scenery so vivid the way you do?
Yeah. So I purposely chose Chicago because Chicago is also not just the setting and the environment, it's also a character in the book. The city of Chicago is a character, because it has so much to offer and it's so intriguing and it has such great history. But so that's why I chose Chicago. It's a city that has a lot to offer. I think people are intrigued by it. I think Chicago is largely misrepresented in the media. So I wanted to show people the real Chicago, all sides of Chicago, not just the bad, but the good and in between. The other thing also is that, I feel like other cities in literature have characters that are attached to that. Like, Michael Connolly puts Harry Bosch in LA. Robert Parker puts Spencer in Boston. I really wanted to, create a character and tie that character to Chicago. So it is this continual thing. This is Chicago based. That being said, yes, I could write this character in any major city or even a small town. I think it'd be interesting to try a small town one time. And so this character can be done in other places, but I would still have the same level of diligence in trying to research the location and the environment, understanding the vibrations of that location and both the physical and the customs of the people and the mindsets. So I could do it. I just chose Chicago.
So this show, a lot of fellow writers watch this show and budding writers. I have a question about dialogue. Your dialogues in your books always have the most natural flow, and it sounds like real, genuine conversations. Like the way somebody might cut somebody off in a sentence, or somebody might throw a little sarcasm joke or something like that. Ash Kane, full of sarcasm. How do you go about how do you go about writing authentic rhythm in dialogue?
You know, there are many different styles of writing dialogue. Some people are more on the verbose side where they write long, kind of dialogue interactions. Some are very short based. Leonard Elmore, the great writer who passed away, had a very, what I call staccato dialogue. I believe that one of the great ways to write dialogue is to read it to yourself. And what I do a lot of times is I'll take a break and read some of the dialogue and play the characters and to see if it sounds natural. And when you read it, your ear can pick up that that's not how someone would speak. I was watching a show the other day, and the way the person was speaking, I was saying, people don't talk like that. Like, that sounds like they were scripted. You know what I mean? And I know I was watching this show about this woman who actually is a private investigator. It's on Netflix. And I'm watching this show with these two women, and they were dealing with romantic situations where people were conned. Okay. And I found the concept intriguing. Obviously, I like detective mystery investigation stuff. But when the women were speaking, it didn't sound natural. It actually sounded like someone said, make sure you say this. And they were like, memorize the line. And that's not how people talk. I mean, written dialogue and verbal dialogue are two different things. And I try to make my written equal what the verbal is. Just like you're sitting on the corner listening to a conversation, or sitting, on a train and two people are sitting next to you talking. I want the dialogue to read like that conversation. So my tip to budding writers or experienced writers is to read back the dialogue, read it back, and let the flow be natural. We cut each other off. We don't always finish sentences. We leave things out. It's okay to do that. We don't always start in the beginning of a sentence. We start in the middle of a sentence, So those are some of my tips.
Thinking about crafting that question last night, I was thinking to myself, when you read a lot of books, you would think that every person speaks the proper, correct King's English, and every person has this monologue, and then the other person has their monologue. That's not how actual on the block conversations go. Like, that's where that question kind of came from,
Yeah, and you got to understand, obviously, your character and the setting, right? Ash Kane, the beauty of Ash Kane is that he's this black private investigator on the younger side, but he travels around the city and different neighborhoods, and he's always Ash Kane, no matter where he is. He is authentically himself, whether he's in the wealthy north side of Chicago or he's in the grittier south side or west side. Ash Kane is always who he's going to be. But Ash Kane also knows how to code switch, right? So he knows that if he's at a country club in Wilmette, Illinois, that there's a different way that things happen there. And so it's not that he's changing, but he is adapting and mixing into that crowd. Also, by the way, if I'm having a dialogue part where these two people at a country club are talking to each other or talking to Ash, that's got to sound different than a South Side pastor talking to Ash Kane. And you have to understand what those differences are and be able to write it so it's believable, because I always want readers to feel like they are at the moment, they are in the scene, they can hear it, smell it, see it, taste it. You want all senses to be stimulated, and hearing it is very important. I want them to hear these people talk.
So you mentioned a very important part of this book. You address the undocumented and the way society at large treats them, and like you said, God forbid something bad happens. Like, who is looking out for them? So tell me why that was important to address today. And I know for a fact you probably had this book already written before a lot of the last recent events took place in the news and the media. Uh,
Well,
so tell me about that lining up just coincidentally, I guess.
it's very coincidental. I wrote this book a couple years ago before the immigration kind of issue really took front and center with this new administration. So people are reading this thinking, oh, Dr. Ian wrote a very timely book. Look at what's happening to undocumented workers. And the truth of the matter, I wish it was like that, but the truth of the matter is no. I had this idea years ago and thought it was interesting to start with a character. And unfortunately, characters like Joaquin Escobar, who is the man who's found dead, unfortunately, people like Joaquin are experiencing really, really awful conditions and awful treatment. And so I think that this book kind of resonates with people because people are now aware at how badly a lot of these people are being treated.
Could you imagine writing something in the future when it comes to that? When it comes to like dealing with ICE and the detention centers and alligator Alcatraz and all these horrible places?
That's why I said, you know, I'm not going to get political, but no matter what the illegal status is of a person, they're still a person. And that's why I said earlier that the dehumanizing of these individuals because they come from another country, because they don't speak English well, because they didn't come here legally, but to dehumanize them, I mean, that's just unthinkable to me. I just think it's horrible. It's no human should ever be dehumanized. And like I said to you off camera, you know, life is short. We got one life, and everyone I think should have the right to be able to make the most out of their life, to be as happy as they can. And I really want people to be happy, not just myself. So I work very hard in my life to stay in a positive space, to give people grace whenever I can, and to not sweat the small stuff.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I noticed in the books, in the series, Ash Kane and his father have a very interesting relationship. They clearly love and care for each other, but there's a tension or there's dynamic under the surface. You explain dynamics of their relationship to us, and what do they mean to the story?
Well, I think that it's important in a story like this, and this is what I always think about. People like to have subplots, right? And yes, the main plot of Beyond Midnight is Ash Kane tracking down what happened to this undocumented worker by the name of Joaquin Escobar. That's the main, story. That's the main narrative. However, I think that good books have layers and other things that are happening. And one thing that is happening in Ash's life is this very estranged relationship he has with his dad, who he's trying to heal the relationship. They both are working on it. His mother, unfortunately, has died of cancer. So it's just the two of them. He has no siblings. And so he and his dad have a very difficult relationship. They're struggling to put it right, to get closer. They love each other, but they weren't always so close. And a large part of that is because Ash's dad, who's a retired psychiatrist, is a very domineering guy. And he's a typical type A kind of personality. And he wanted all these things for his only son. And Ash made different decisions. And that really hurt the dad because the dad had this whole image of what he wanted his son to grow up to be and how he wanted his son to live. And Ash decided that he wanted to make his own decisions. So they've had a distant relationship because Ash felt as though his dad wasn't supportive of his decisions, wasn't expressive of his love. But now they're trying to make it better. And I think that people are intrigued by how Ash and how the dad are struggling emotionally and internally to try to make this right.
Speaking of relationships, every superhero needs a sidekick. Batman had Robin, and Ash Kane has the mechanic. I'm gonna tell you for the past few books, I think I like Mechanic the most, man. It's my favorite character. Whenever he shows up, I get happy for the mechanic. So tell the people, what does the mechanic mean to the overall story, and what role does he play in Ash Kane's world, his life?
So Mechanic is his sidekick. He's a Lithuanian guy who Ash Kane has been friends with for a very long time. Mechanic is a great character to write. It's funny, I laugh because my cousin, who loves this series, is after me every book. Give us more Mechanic. I love Mechanic. He's my favorite. More Mechanic. So a little kind of teaser. Book six, the next book that's coming out that I'm writing now, a lot of Mechanic. Trust me. Mechanic goes to work. Yeah. But to those who haven't read the series, Mechanic is a guy who speaks very little through his mouth, and he speaks a lot with his fist and a gun. He's the kind of guy who says, shoot first and then figure it out later. He's just a tough guy. And he's Ash Kane's right-hand man. And he's not only fun to read, but he's also fun to write. I have a lot of fun writing Mechanic. He can do things that I could never do in my regular life. He's just fun. I think people really dig him a lot. They do. Like you just said, they like Mechanic. So he's going to show up in a big way in book 6.
And you know what? I just thought about it when you said it. I was going to ask you, would you ever do like a spin-off of Mechanic by himself, a prequel, but Mechanic barely ever talks? So I'm like, how would that even go over? He barely even have lines, you know?
Well, Mechanic is hopefully, knock on wood, a couple more Ash Kanes, and I would also like to write a series. I don't want to stop writing Ash, but I want to write a series that's based on Mechanic. By the way, the reason why he's called Mechanic is because when he was a kid, he was a tough kid, but he was really smart. And when people had problems in the neighborhood, they went to Mechanic to fix it. And so he got the nickname Mechanic because he fixed things.
So your series is in development to become a TV series. Congratulations. So can you give us any potential hint on casting or the type of actor you would love to see playing Ash Kane in particular?
Yeah, it has been optioned, which means that a production company has purchased the rights to develop it into a TV show. And then once it gets developed, then you try to sell it to a network, whether it's Amazon, Hulu, whatever, Netflix. And so we're at the stage now where I've written the pilot TV episode, and now we're going to try to attach. Attach means you ask an actor and or director to be part of the project ahead of time. So you say, okay, we got this actor. Let's say it's a guy like as Aaron Pierre, by the way, who was in Top Boy, a great UK drama, urban drama. But let's say we go to Aaron Pierre and say, hey, would you be willing to play Ash Kane? He says, I love it. I want to play it. We attach him to the project so that when we go out to the networks to try to sell it, we say, we got this guy, Aaron Pierre. So we got a long list of people. Actually, ironically, we're going to have this call soon to talk about who we want to go after to see if they will attach to it.
Yeah, man, Aaron Pierre for the hypothetical, but he did so good with Rebel Ridge last year on Netflix. I think he'll be an amazing Ash Kane, bro. You got the chops for it. You got the chops.
Who else do you think? Anybody come to mind?
Well, the brother already playing Alex Cross already, so you can't do that. He already doing Alex Cross, but by Morris Chestnut, classic brother.
Yeah. Morris could do it. We talked to Morris. Morris had an interest in it, so we'll see how that goes. Sometimes these projects, you want to try someone who is unknown, and because I shouldn't say unknown, but someone who's not as famous, like as a Morris Chestnut, who everyone knows, but someone who has less recognition, because I believe, just from my viewing experiences of what I like to watch, that when you have an actor who is not well known for something, then he is more believable in whatever role you are watching him in. So instead of seeing the actor, whoever that actor is, you actually see the character. So you see the actor as the character and not seeing the character inside the actor. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense, sir. Makes perfect sense. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So on the bottom side of the interview, before you get out of here, man, I love asking my scholars this question lately. How do you go about the art of reading, right? I love hearing people's reading practices. I'm a very process-driven person. but like describe it as a professional reading, and then whenever you do it for leisure, just kicking back, relaxing on a weekend or something. Those two different worlds of reading.
Well, I am very careful not to read anything that is within my genre while I'm in the midst of writing a book. Because I think that unfortunately, without intention, subliminally, sometimes that story or that style can seep its way into your consciousness, and then a subconsciousness, and then you end up repeating it or imitating it in your own work. So as a rule, I don't read within my genre while I'm writing in my genre, but reading things like autobiographies and things like that, I have no problem reading because it's so different than that. I'm also a very voracious reader in the sense of, I like to read a lot, but I'm also writing a lot. And so I have to be very careful about when I read what I read. And I also like to finish books. Like, I'm not a long reader. Like, I expect to have a book done within 3 days at most. If it's a good book and written well, I think that people should just, write it in a way that they can get it done. You know what I mean? And so, my nonfiction reading is different. I read a lot of autobiographies, or I read some medical stuff. I read less books on that side and more articles. I read a lot of articles. What's the latest business about trans fats, or what's the latest thing about GLP-1 agonists? So I'm reading all the time.
And so you said you're finishing a book in about 3 days or so. You're a very, very busy man. What's kind of like an idea of your reading schedule? You're an early morning guy? You're a late at night guy? Are you just getting it in between stuff?
Yeah, I get it in between all times. On a plane, I like to read a lot on the plane. I like to read if I'm on the road in my hotel room before I go to sleep. So I really can read. If a book is good and has me captivated and engaged, I can read anytime. I want to just get to it whenever I can.
So before you get out of here, I heard you say it somewhere else. Your next book is on menopause, I believe, correct?
My
So
next book is yeah.
so tell us a little bit about the next book on menopause. What can we expect it? And it's a real, real major topic right now. I'm seeing it everywhere. Women are talking more openly about dealing with menopause.
Yeah, my next book is going to be on menopause. It's called The Menopause Kitchen. It's going to come out in September, October of next year. And my very good friend, the chef Rachel Ray, has written the recipes in the back of the book. And so there'll be a meal plan for women. The idea is real simple. How can women alleviate some of their menopausal symptoms through food? By eating. I know a lot of women take medications. I know a lot of women take supplements, and sometimes you have to. But what can you do at your table to help reduce your hot flashes, your night sweats, your anxiety, your depression? And so it'll have a plan, and then we'll have all these great recipes that Rachel has created for women to be able to take control of this very, very important transition in their life.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. On the way out, man, we see that the literacy rate in the nation is down right now, drastically. We're writers, right? What can we do to get those numbers trending in the right direction and kind of change the landscape on literacy across America?
Exactly what you're doing. We got to keep talking to people where they are, online, on the radio. We need to go to podcasts and places that don't typically have authors and talk about books. Book people tend to be quiet people, right? People don't rave about how much I love books, but they rave about, like, did you see this show? Did you see this movie? But we need to have that kind of enthusiasm and energy when it comes around books. So people like you who are having this kind of show, talking to authors, is really, really helpful. And you're touching people. And by the way, it doesn't matter how big your audience is. If you are talking to even a small group of people, and they in turn tell a friend, and they tell a friend, you now have a ripple effect. And that's what's really important. So we need more people like you who are talking about books. It's funny, on my Instagram, I get people who send me messages all the time, DMs, and these guys love my books. And, one guy's a truck driver, for example. Now, people automatically assume that truck drivers don't read. Truck drivers read a lot. They read a lot. And so, um, getting people to be excited about it and also getting them to talk about it, telling their friends that they're listening to something, and an audio book or a digital book or even reading a traditional book. I think that is how you spread the word. So I appreciate what you're doing, and I know that other people who are not on your show appreciate that you're trying to help spread the word about how great books are.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Dr. Smith. And yes, for the truck drivers, I did about 7 or 8 years on the road, on the truck, delivery truck. I did all of my associate degree on the truck. I did most of my bachelor degree on the truck. And I read a ton of books at work on the truck, man. So yes, thank you for coming into my house, Dr. Smith. Look forward to seeing your next publications. Look forward to seeing the TV series coming soon. And thank you until next time. Thanks to the audience watching this later. We love y'all. Peace.
Yeah, hit me on social media too, by the way, at Dr. Ian Smith. Spell the doctor out, IAN Smith. Send me a message. I'd love to hear from you.
There it is. Thank y'all very much.
Take care, man. See you.
Yes, sir.